One of the big tragedies is that we're increasingly building cities for people to invest in, rather than cities for people to live in. I think it's impossible to come up with any single formula that is going to be the magic way in which we can resist the forces that are transforming our cities in ways which are not at all convenient to live in. What I would think is that we need to experiment as much as we can. We should draw upon cultural histories. We should draw upon past experiences of what did work or what didn't work. And we should really try to defend spaces in the city that we, the people, already reasonably control, and then colonize those spaces which have been taken away from us. There's been a lot of dispossession of the spaces of the city which were once popular spaces, and they've been turned into private spaces or spaces for the upper income, or just spaces for investment. And one of the big tragedies is that we're increasingly building cities for people to invest in, rather than cities for people to live in. And I think the people who live in cities have to take back their own cities and start to actually resist this process of colonization by macrofinance and big developmentalism. I think Brazil had the very special experience of coming out of the dictatorship and into democracy at the very moment when the world was insisting on more neoliberal forms of governance and more neoliberal forms of economic policy. And I think what happened was there was a sort of a collision between a strong emphasis upon urban democracy in the 1990s into 2000 and the neoliberalism, and those two came together. And I think right now we have to say that neoliberalism won. But on the other hand, I think the experience that was gained here in Brazil during that period of animated engagement, which produced things like right to the city clauses in the Constitution, that actually made space for popular consultation and gave much more power to the people, which has now been taken back, I think, by big capital and big finance, and of course by right-wing politics. So that, again, there is something in the tradition here in Brazil which I think can be drawn upon. And actually more widely in Latin America, one thinks of the sorts of movements that occurred in Bolivia that brought Morales to power, the sorts of movements that occurred in the early years in Ecuador, and thinks of Chavez in the early phases, when I think there were exemplary cases here in Latin America of popular power being mobilized in ways which were actually constructive and allowed for a different kind of urbanization to take place than the one that is hegemonic and dominant today.